She always drew her family with only two shadows. The first time anyone noticed, it was on a page of cheap notebook paper crumpled at the bottom of her school bag. Crayon lines, shaky but purposeful, stretched across the page. A stick figure. Girl stood between two taller figures, her mother and her older brother, each with long, dark shadows cast beneath them. Hers was shorter, lighter, but still there. Only two shadows followed the family. One figure had none. The teacher, Mrs. Ramirez, stared at the drawing longer than she should have. At first, she thought it was simply a child's clumsy mistake, forgetting to color the shadow. But then she flipped through the other pages Emma Dawson had filled in recent weeks. Every picture, every scribble, every lopsided family portrait told the same story. Two shadows, never three. That night, Mrs. Ramirez tucked the drawings back into Emma's folder, but the images stuck with her. She had been teaching long enough to know when something was wrong. But Emma wasn't withdrawn. She wasn't sullen. She laughed in class, raised her hand eagerly, and hummed little songs under her breath when she worked. Still, those drawings whispered a truth Emma herself hadn't spoken aloud. Across the city, the world was still running at its usual frantic pace. Glass towers caught the last light of dusk, reflecting a skyline always hungry, always reaching higher. In one of those towers on the 39th floor, Nathan Cole closed his laptop with a snap. Numbers, contracts, acquisitions, the lifeblood of his empire. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion sharpening the lines of his face. He had built his fortune on precision, never on sentiment. And yet, when his assistant dropped off the day's mail, one envelope stood out. Not a bill, not a proposal, not a lawsuit. A child's drawing, folded carelessly, edges torn, colors bleeding off the page. Nathan frowned, pulling it closer. 3 stick figures, 1 girl, 1 woman, 1 boy. And again, 2 shadows. For a moment, he thought it had been misdelivered. But the envelope had no name, no return address. Only a single sentence written on the back in blocky crayon letters. Families don't always match. Nathan set the paper down slowly. Something in his chest tightened, though he couldn't explain why. The next morning, Emma sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, crayons scattered like fallen soldiers around her. The walls of her room were decorated with taped-up drawings, some curling at the corners. In every one, the same pattern repeated. 2 shadows, never 3. Her older brother Daniel peeked in from the hallway. Still drawing? Emma grinned. Almost finished. She held up her picture proudly. See? Daniel tilted his head. Why don't you ever give me a shadow? Emma blinked at him, her face serious. Because you're not here all the way. Daniel frowned, confused. What's that supposed to mean? Emma didn't answer. She went back to coloring, her little hand pressing hard enough to snap the crayon in half. Behind them, their mother, Claire, leaned against the doorframe, her diner uniform still smelling faintly of coffee and fried food. She forced a tired smile. All right, artists. Bedtime. Tomorrow's a school day. Daniel groaned, retreating down the hall. But Emma lingered, carefully taping her newest drawing above her bed. 2 shadows stretched behind the family, reaching across the paper like they were searching for someone who never arrived. Nathan Cole couldn't shake the drawing. He found himself staring at it during meetings, ignoring the drone of analysts reciting numbers. He set it beside his laptop at home, where the city skyline stretched like a cold sea of stars. Families don't always match. The words burned into him. He had no children, no wife, no family, not anymore. But the drawing felt less like an accident and more like a message, one he wasn't sure was meant for him. By the 3rd day, curiosity overtook him. He called his driver and gave an address he hadn't visited in years, an elementary school tucked away on a quiet street. When he stepped through the front doors, the air was filled with the smell of crayons and pencil shavings, the echo of laughter bouncing off faded bulletin boards. He hadn't stood in a school hallway since his own childhood, but the sensation was strangely grounding. Mrs. Ramirez spotted him at once. A man like Nathan didn't blend in anywhere. She hesitated, then approached. Mr. Nathan Cole. He held up the folded paper. This ended up in my mail. One of your students? Her face paled as she recognized the drawing instantly. That's Emma's. Nathan frowned. Emma? Mrs. Ramirez hesitated, then lowered her voice. She's bright, creative. But her drawings, they worry me. I don't know what she sees when she puts shadow to paper, but it's not what most kids her age draw. Nathan's eyes flickered to the picture again. What do you think it means? Mrs. Ramirez shook her head. Children tell the truth in symbols. She draws what she feels, not what she knows. Before Nathan could reply, the classroom door opened, and a little girl darted out, clutching a handful of crayons. Golden. Curls framed her round face, her eyes too wide, too knowing. She nearly collided with him, stopping short, staring up like he had stepped straight out of a dream. You're real, she whispered. Nathan blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? Emma tilted her head. You're the shadow. The hallway. Fell silent. Nathan glanced down at the drawing in his hand. For the first time, he wondered if the missing shadow had never been a mistake at all. Nathan Cole had been called many things in his life. Calculated, ruthless, untouchable, but never a shadow. The words of a 6-year-old girl lingered in his chest like a splinter. Emma didn't look away. Her golden curls bounced as she clutched the crayons tighter against her chest, as if holding something fragile and secret. Behind her, Mrs. Ramirez cleared her throat. Emma, sweetie, why don't you go back inside? Emma frowned. But I want to show him. Mrs. Ramirez hesitated, then glanced at Nathan, her expression caught between concern and curiosity. Finally, she nodded. Emma tugged at Nathan's sleeve, pulling him toward the classroom. He followed, more out of surprise than intention. The room smelled of wax, glue, and paper, a chaos of art projects and alphabet charts taped to walls that had seen generations of children come and go. Emma skipped to her desk, which was cluttered with scraps of paper, half-used crayons, and a notebook bursting at the seams. She flipped to a page near the back and thrust it toward him. It was another drawing. This time, 4 stick figures stood beneath a crooked sun. A girl, a boy, a woman, and beside them, an empty outline. Not colored, not filled, just a faint sketch. No shadow at all. You see? Emma asked, her voice soft but certain. That's you. Nathan's throat tightened. I don't even know you. Emma shrugged as though the fact was irrelevant. Shadows don't ask to be picked. They just are. Mrs. Ramirez stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. Emma, enough now. Let Mr. Cole get back to his day. Nathan should have left. He should have folded the paper, handed it back, and walked away. That was what his old self would have done. The man who never stayed anywhere he didn't need to. But instead, he crouched down, eye level with the child, and asked the question that slipped from his lips before he could stop it. Why only 2 shadows? Emma tilted her head, considering. Her eyes were far too wise for her age. Because not everyone stays. Only the ones who do get shadows. The words hit Nathan like a blow. He opened his mouth, but Mrs. Ramirez intervened, sensing the weight, pressing into the air. Mr. Cole, perhaps you should speak to her mother. Claire picks her up after school. I'll let her know. That evening, Claire Dawson wiped her hands on a damp towel as she balanced a pot of macaroni with one arm and reached for the ringing phone with the other. Her double shift at the diner had left her shoulders aching, her hair damp with sweat. Hello? This is Mrs. Ramirez, came the voice on the other end. I think we should talk. It's about Emma's drawings. Claire's heart sank. She had dreaded this conversation. Is she distracting the class again? No, nothing like that, Mrs. Ramirez reassured. But there's a man, Nathan Cole. One of her pictures somehow reached him. He came by today. Claire froze, the pot clattering back onto the stove. What? Who is he? Why would Emma? She insisted he's the missing shadow. Claire pressed her palm to her forehead, torn between frustration and fear. Emma had always been imaginative, spinning fairy tales out of dust and whispers. But dragging strangers into it? That was dangerous. I'll handle it, Claire said finally, her voice clipped. The next afternoon, Claire arrived at the school earlier than usual. She spotted Emma first, sitting cross-legged under the oak tree outside, humming to herself as she shaded a picture with bright orange. Beside her, startlingly out of place in his immaculate suit, stood Nathan Cole. Claire's pulse quickened. She approached quickly, her eyes narrowing. Emma, she called, sharper than intended. Pack up your things, we're leaving. Emma looked up innocently. But Mommy, I was just showing him. Claire cut her off, turning to Nathan. I don't know what she's told you, but this stops now. She's a child. She imagines things. That's all. Nathan held up his hands in quiet surrender. I didn't seek this out. The drawing ended up in my briefcase. I came to return it. Claire's gaze flickered to the paper Emma held. Another picture, the same pattern. 3 figures, 2 shadows. 1 missing. You've seen them? She asked, her voice softening with reluctant fear. Yes, Nathan said. And she thinks I'm... He stopped, suddenly aware of how absurd it sounded. Claire exhaled, weariness flooding her features. The lines of exhaustion carved deeper into her face. She's been doing this for months, drawing shadows, talking about people who aren't there. It's her way of making sense of things. She lost her father young, and her brother is never home enough to feel present. She fills the emptiness with drawings. Nathan glanced at Emma, who was still humming softly, oblivious to the storm of adult words. She told me only the ones who stay get shadows, he murmured. Claire's eyes widened, startled that Emma had shared that detail. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Mr. Cole, Claire said firmly, regaining her composure. I appreciate your concern, but you don't need to involve yourself. Emma's my responsibility. We've gotten by without shadows before, and we'll keep doing so. Nathan hesitated. He should have left then. But he didn't. Something about the girl's crayon worlds tugged at him, echoing places inside himself he had long buried. Sometimes, he said quietly, more to himself than to her, shadows show up where they're needed most. Claire stiffened, unsure whether to take it as comfort or intrusion. She gathered Emma's things briskly, took her hand, and walked away without another word. Nathan watched them disappear into the busy street, the drawing still burning in his mind. That night, Emma taped a new picture above her bed. The stick figures looked the same, but this time the empty outline had the faintest trace of gray shading beneath it. Not a full shadow. Not yet. Just the suggestion of one. Claire stood. In the doorway, her arms folded. Why'd you add that? Emma smiled sleepily. Because he didn't leave. Claire's breath caught, but she said nothing. She only kissed her daughter's forehead and turned off the light, the weight of uncertainty pressing harder than ever. And across the city, in a glass tower lit against the night, Nathan Cole sat, alone at his desk. The child's words looped endlessly in his mind. Only the ones who stay get shadows. The wind pressed cold against the classroom windows as Emma bent over her notebook, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Her crayons moved in quick, sure strokes. Yellow sun, crooked house, smiling faces. But this time, something was different. Mrs. Ramirez leaned over, her brow furrowing. 4 figures stood hand in hand beneath the sun. Claire, Daniel, Emma, and next to them, Nathan. He was taller, broader, drawn with careful detail. And for the first time, his shadow stretched across the page. Mrs. Ramirez felt a strange chill. She crouched down, keeping her voice low. Emma, sweetheart, who's this? Emma grinned. That's Mr. Cole. He stayed. The teacher bit her lip. She had seen children invent friends before, entire worlds spun from imagination. But Emma's gaze was steady, her certainty unshakable. She wasn't imagining Nathan. She had claimed him. When Claire arrived that afternoon, Mrs. Ramirez hesitated, then showed her the drawing. Claire's face stiffened. This has to stop. She crumpled the paper quickly, stuffing it into her purse before Emma returned from the coat rack. She can't think this way. It'll only break her. But that evening, while Emma slept, Claire pulled the paper back out. She smoothed the wrinkles against the kitchen table, staring at the bold shadow stretching beneath Nathan's figure. It was only crayon, only a child's scribble. And yet, it rattled her more than she wanted to admit. 2 days later, the city, rain fell in relentless sheets, turning sidewalks into mirrors of gray water. Claire rushed from her diner shift, umbrella useless against the wind, her mind already on Emma's damp shoes and whether the radiator would hold through the night. She nearly collided with him outside the school gates. Nathan stood there, his suit jacket darkened by rain, hair plastered to his forehead. In his hand, he held Emma's backpack, which had apparently burst open in the classroom. Papers poked out, damp at the edges. You dropped this, he said simply. Claire froze. You had no right. I didn't look. Nathan cut in. His voice was calm, steady, but something softer flickered beneath it. She left it on the desk. I just didn't want her to lose it. Claire's jaw tightened. We don't need your help. But before she could pull the bag away, Emma burst out the doors, laughter bright against the rain. She saw Nathan and stopped short, her face lighting up. You came back. Nathan hesitated only a beat, then crouched to her level, handing her the bag. Couldn't let you lose your drawings, could I? Emma hugged the backpack like it was treasure. See, Mommy? He stays. Claire's breath caught, but she didn't argue, not with Emma's joy radiating so fiercely in the downpour. Instead, she turned quickly and hurried them down the street. But even as they walked away, she felt Nathan's presence behind them, like a shadow that hadn't yet faded. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She climbed out of bed and padded barefoot to the kitchen, where Claire sat at the table, bills scattered around her like fallen leaves. Mommy. Claire looked up, exhaustion etched deep into her eyes. Why aren't you asleep? Emma slid into the chair across from her, pulling out her notebook. She flipped to a new page and began to draw. This picture was different, rough, rushed. A tall building, rain slashing across the paper. A tiny figure at the bottom, alone. No shadows. Claire's chest tightened. Emma, what's that? The little girl frowned. It's Mr. Cole, but I don't know if he'll still stay when... It rains. Claire reached across the table, stilling her daughter's hand. Sweetheart, you can't count on people you barely know. Shadows come and go. We only have each other. Emma's lip trembled, but she didn't argue. Instead, she closed her notebook quietly and shuffled back to bed, leaving the half-finished drawing behind. Claire stared at it long into the night, fear gnawing at her. Nathan should have walked away. That's what he told himself as his driver guided the car back through the storm-slick streets. But instead of heading home, he gave a different address. When the car stopped, he stepped out into the rain, standing in front of the diner where Claire worked late nights. Through the fogged glass, he saw her wiping down tables, her movements heavy, shoulders bent. He stayed there a long moment, watching, before finally leaving. The test came 3 nights later. Emma had been rehearsing for her school's winter recital for weeks. Claire had promised she'd be there, though she wasn't sure if her boss would actually let her off her shift. But Emma believed her. She had even drawn the scene. Rows of chairs, kids on stage, music notes floating in the air. In the front row, she had drawn 2 shadows waiting for her. That evening, Claire rushed from the diner, apron still tied at her waist, only to find the auditorium half empty, the lights dimming. Parents filled rows in clusters, their faces glowing with anticipation. She searched frantically for Emma, already on stage in a simple paper crown, scanning the crowd with wide eyes. Claire's heart sank. She was late. Too late. But then she saw him. Nathan sat in the front row, hands folded neatly in his lap, his sharp suit softened by the glow of the stage lights. And next to him, the chair Emma had saved, sat empty, waiting for Claire. Emma spotted him and... Her face bloomed into a smile so bright it carried across the stage. She waved, breaking from the performance for a moment. The teacher frowned, but Emma didn't care. She had her shadow in the crowd. Claire slipped into the seat beside Nathan, breathless, her apron damp with rain. She wanted to scold him, to push him away. But when she saw Emma's joy, the words caught in her throat. You didn't have to, she whispered. Nathan kept his gaze on the stage, his voice low. Yes, I did. Claire looked at him then. Really looked. The man she had thought untouchable, all glass and steel, now sat quietly in a school auditorium, clapping along to an off-key children's song. And Emma, standing tall on stage, sang, louder than anyone. For the first time in years, Claire felt the faintest warmth of hope stir inside her. Maybe shadows didn't just haunt, maybe sometimes they stayed. That night, Emma added a new picture to her wall. 4 figures stood together, hand in hand beneath a paper sun. 3 shadows stretched long and dark across the page, and beneath, the 4th figure, drawn in soft gray crayon, a shadow finally appeared in full. This time it wasn't fading. It was bold. When Claire saw it, she didn't crumple the paper or tear it down. She only stood there quietly, watching her daughter sleep, wondering if she was strong enough to let a new shadow stay. Snow had begun to fall, dusting the city in silence. It clung to rooftops, softened the edges of streets, and blurred the hard lines of glass towers. In Emma's apartment, a single radiator rattled against the cold, struggling to keep the night at bay. Emma sat on the floor with her crayons again, coloring carefully under the yellow glow of the lamp. This picture was different. The figures weren't standing under the sun. They were in front of a dark building, their shadows stretching across the snow. 4 shadows, steady and unbroken. Claire watched from the kitchen, arms crossed tightly against her chest. She had been wary since the recital, torn between gratitude for Nathan's presence and fear of what it meant. She had learned long ago not to rely on people. Shadows had a way of leaving. "Emma," she said softly. "Why do you keep drawing him?" Emma looked up, her blue eyes wide with certainty. "Because he's here." Claire sighed, her voice weary. "For now." "But," Emma shook her head, firm. "No. Really here." Before Claire could reply, a knock rattled the door. When she opened it, Nathan stood in the hallway, snow caught on the shoulders of his dark coat. He held no briefcase, no files, just a quiet expression. "May I come in?" he asked. Claire hesitated, then stepped aside. Emma squealed, running, to show him the drawing. "Look." 4 shadows now. Nathan crouched, his sharp features softening as he studied the page. His voice was low, almost reverent. "That's the best one yet." Claire's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him to stop. Stop making promises he couldn't keep. Stop giving Emma a reason to hope. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed violently on the counter. She answered, listening in silence. Then her face drained of color. "What is it?" Nathan asked. Claire's voice cracked. "Daniel, he didn't come home. His friends said he got caught up with the wrong crowd. They think—" She swallowed hard. "They think he's at the old warehouse near the docks." Emma's eyes filled with panic. "Daniel's shadow can't go away." Nathan didn't hesitate. "I'll find him." The warehouse loomed like a skeleton at the edge of the river, its broken windows flickering with shadows of movement inside. Nathan's shoes crunched against the frozen ground as he approached, every instinct sharpened. He had negotiated with billionaires, outmaneuvered rivals, but this was different. This was chaos, unpredictable, and raw. Inside, he found Daniel pressed against the wall, a group of older boys surrounding him, their laughter sharp and cruel. One shoved him, another grabbed at his backpack. Nathan stepped forward, his presence slicing through the noise. "That's enough." The boys froze, startled by the man who looked like he had stepped straight out of another world. Dark coat, icy gaze, authority carved into every line of his body. "Who the hell are you?" one sneered. Nathan's voice was calm, steady as steel. "The man who's here to take him home." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the boys muttered curses and scattered into the night, unwilling to challenge the weight of a man who didn't flinch. Daniel trembled, his face pale. I didn't mean to—" Nathan cut him off gently. "Everyone stumbles. What matters is what you do next. Come." As they stepped back into the cold, Daniel whispered, "Why did you come for me?" Nathan's answer was simple. "Because shadows stay." When Nathan returned Daniel safely to the apartment, Claire's relief broke into tears. She pulled her son into her arms, whispering a storm of scolding and gratitude all at once. Emma clung to Nathan's leg, eyes shining. "You didn't let his shadow go away," she said firmly. Nathan's heart clenched. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. Not the cold, empty echo of boardrooms, but the warmth of belonging. Claire wiped her tears, her voice unsteady. "I don't understand you. Why do this? You don't owe us anything." Nathan looked at her, his gaze steady. "Maybe I needed a place where my shadow could mean something again." Weeks passed. Winter deepened, but so did the quiet rhythm of their lives. Nathan began to appear not just in crises, but in the small moments, walking Emma to school, fixing the loose hinge on Claire's kitchen cabinet, helping Daniel with homework. Emma's drawings filled her wall. Always 4 figures. Always 4 shadows. And sometimes, when she was feeling bold, she drew them closer together, their shadows overlapping, impossible to separate. One evening, as snow drifted outside, Nathan invited them to his rooftop. Fairy lights strung across the garden glowed against the night. Candles flickered on a table set for 3. Emma gasped when she saw it. "It's like a storybook." Nathan smiled faintly. "Every story needs light." Claire hesitated at the edge of the table, her heart caught between caution and something she didn't dare name. Nathan turned to her, his voice low but sure. You told me once that shadows come and go. But what if they don't? What if sometimes they're the only proof we were ever here? Claire's breath caught. She saw the man not as the cold executive the city feared, but as someone carrying wounds as deep as her own. And in that moment, the fear of losing paled against the possibility of keeping. Emma tugged at Nathan's sleeve, holding out a new drawing. This one was different. The figures were no longer stick-thin. She had given them shape, color, detail. They looked like her mother, like Daniel, and like Nathan. And beneath them, their shadows stretched into one long silhouette, as if they belonged to each other. Nathan's throat tightened as he read the words Emma had scrawled at the bottom in her uneven hand. Not just shadows, family. That night, after Emma drifted to sleep, Claire lingered by the door. I don't know if I'm ready to trust this, she admitted, but I know she already has. Nathan stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. Then I'll stay until you are. For the first time in years, Claire let herself believe. And in the glow of the city lights, with snow falling like whispers outside the window, the two of them stood together. Not as strangers, not as shadows, but as something more. A beginning. Years. Later, Emma would look back at the wall of drawings that once told her story, crayon lines fading with time, paper curling at the edges. But one picture always stood out, the first where 4 shadows stood together. She would smile then, because she knew what her younger self had always believed. Shadows don't lie. They tell us who stays. And sometimes, if you're lucky, shadows turn into family.